Hello and welcome to Homer for Wednesday, June 18th, 2025. Today we will be reading from lines 94 to 106 in book 11 of the Iliad. Today we will have a very exciting sequence in which Agamemnon impales somebody in the head. Sucks for him. And we will also be hearing about what Achilles did to two others who Agamemnon slays. Anyway, let's do it. Oileus verily leapt down from his chariot and stood and faced him. But even as he rushed straight upon him, the king smote him on the forehead with a sharp spear. Nor was the spear stayed by his helm, heavy with bronze, but passed through it and through the bone, and all his brain was spattered about within. So stayed he him in his fury. These then did Agamemnon, king of men, leave there, gleaming with their naked breasts, Pamphainontas, when he had stripped off their tunics, and went on to slay Isos and Antiphos, two sons of Priam, one a bastard and one born in wedlock, the twain being in one car. The bastard held the reins, but glorious Antiphos stood by his side to fight. These twain had Achilles on a time bound with fresh withs amid the spurs of Ida, taking them as they were, herding their sheep, and had them set free for a ransom. Excellent. Let's sing it. Ei toiok sipon kate palmenos antios estei. Tuonitus memoata matopionoxei duori. Nuxuedeste panedoruis kete calcopareia. Ala diauteiselt keoste uenke paloste. Endona pas papelacto de masse de min memoata. Raitus men libenauti vonax andlon Agamemnon. Stathesi pambainon to sepe peritus secitonas. Aotaroberi son de gai antivonex anarixon. Hui eduo priamoio noton kai gnesion ampo. Einen inti froeon tasomen notosen iokeuen. Antifosa parebasque pariclutoso potakielos. Idesen cremois indide moskloisi lukoisi. Poemanoin poemainon te poesi la bon kaialusen poinon. Awesome. Sorry about that. Big liar, big job. Great. And the screen hasn't frozen. What a dream. Anyway, so I like this passage because it has a recollection to Achilles. So obviously not much of the complete epic cycle survives, right? There was this big, I'm sure you guys remember from way back in book 8, we had this description of book 8 and book 9, actually, I think it was book 9, where, basically they described all the things that like Achilles accomplished in the Lesbian Isles, right? Basically, like, these guys have been like on the warpath for like a very long time now, right? 9 years. It's been a very, very long time. And they've done things to the sons of Priam that you would not believe. No, but like that like have like occurred in the past, right? So one of these things that is recalled here. First of all, we have this very violent death. Okay, very nice of Oileus to get off his chariot. That's memorable. Good job. Unfortunately, he gets impaled straight up in the head, right? It's very pathetic image here. Stathesi Pamphainontas, right? Their chests are bared to the sun, shining, right? Are they shining with blood? Are they shining with sweat? Who knows? But they don't have their chitons anymore, right? So they're out. Rest in peace. Then we get down here, and our way of introducing Isos and Antiphos, right? Two sons of Priam, which, by the way, Priam loses a lot of sons in this book. I think he loses 7 total from Agamemnon's Aristeia. One of them's a bastard, and he's the one with the reins. The other one's not a bastard, and he's the one's, I don't know, that just holding a sword and yelling and whatever. And how do we know these people? Well, we know them because Achilles has encountered them in the past. Where did he encounter them? Well, he encountered them amid the spurs of Ida, taking him as they were herding their sheep. So they're kind of like normal people, I guess, right? Like they don't have like people herding their sheep for them. They're out there in the woods, like, excuse me, they're like near Mount Ida, right? Like, you know, they're herding, right? Like they're not just sitting around in like the Hall of Prime all day, like getting fat on like, you know, despotically gained like infinite food and like, you know, concubines, right? Like Prime probably did in order to have so many sons. You know, like it's like there's a story here, and they're out doing something, and Achilles encounters them. And this is remarkable for two reasons. First of all, it's a recollection of Achilles while Achilles is not in the battle. And second of all, because it helps us understand something about these two people that die, right? And, you know, we'll get to hear more about how exactly they die next time. But I just think the recollection is notable because, and this goes back to sort of how I began this diatribe, which is that, you know, this might have been a particular part of like the beginning of like the Iliadic cycle, right? So like at some point Achilles might have like found these guys in the woods and like bound them, right? And this might have been a part of a different epic poem that was not the Iliad or the Odyssey. And this story would have been very, very remarkably familiar for, you know, the people that are listening, because of the fact that like it's in a different like series, you know what I mean? Like it's in a different a part of the epic cycle. This is very much the same with, you know, in book 9 we have like the only mention of like Orestes, right, in like all of the Iliad and the Odyssey, right? And of course like Orestes is like very important because Orestes like is the entire like Orestes represents like the entire like he's the hero of the Oresteia, right, which is a huge play that like we all remember, we all know about, right? But you know, he like that's just like a single mention in the Iliad. So these twain had Achilles on a time bound with fresh wives amid the spurs of Ida, blah blah blah, taking them for a ransom. That could be an entire story. That could be an entire epic poem, right? And it could be, you know, a very recognizable epic poem. Oh yeah, the epic poem with the two sons of Primes, one of whom is a bastard, the other one who's not, right? And they get ransomed. Maybe there was some dynamic there, right? Like they were shepherds. Why were they shepherding, right? Why aren't they just being kingly princes, right? You know, there's just so many things to like ask questions about, and all we really have is this like a culminating like death scene for them, right? And that really is what the Iliad is all about. Is basically like, you know, there is so much memory attached to these names, these famous names, right? And the Iliad is all about bringing things to an end, if that makes sense. It brings the war to an end, brings these heroes' lives to an end, and perhaps deeper on a larger metapoetic level, it brings their Homeric story, their epic story to an end, because this is all that survives of them. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to explaining more about just exactly what happens to these two Trojan heroes tomorrow. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Take care.